The discovery happened on a Tuesday, which Captain Sarah Chen would later think was remarkably ordinary for such an extraordinary day. She stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, humanity's most advanced deep space exploration vessel, watching the sensor readings cascade across multiple screens in patterns that made no sense whatsoever. "Run the scans again," she ordered, her voice steady despite the growing knot in her stomach. The stellar cartography team had been tracking an anomaly in the Kepler 442 system for 3 weeks, something that registered as a planetary body but moved in ways that violated every law of orbital mechanics. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, her chief science officer, looked up from his console with confusion written across his face. "Captain, I've run the scans 17 times. The readings are consistent, but they're impossible." Sarah moved closer to examine the holographic display floating above the main tactical table. The object in question appeared to be roughly the size of Earth, complete with what looked like continents, oceans, and even weather patterns visible through spectral analysis. But, unlike any planet in recorded history, this one was moving under its own power through interstellar space at a velocity that should have torn apart any natural celestial body. "What's our current distance?" Sarah asked. "Approximately 47 million kilometers and, closing," Webb replied. "At our current approach vector, we'll be within optimal scanning range in 6 hours. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the expedition's xenoarchaeologist, stepped forward from where she'd been studying the readings. Her specialty was ancient alien civilizations, and the expression on her weathered face suggested she was seeing something that challenged every theory she'd ever held about galactic history. "Captain, I need to share something that might sound crazy," Dr. Vasquez began, her accented English carrying the weight of decades spent studying the remnants of long-dead civilizations. "The surface features we're detecting, they're not natural. Those aren't continents and oceans. They're structures. Massive, interconnected structures covering the entire surface of what we initially thought was a planet." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of the ship's engines and life support systems. Sarah felt the familiar tingle at the base of her skull that always preceded moments of profound discovery, the sensation that told her they were about to stumble into something that would change everything. "Elaborate, Doctor," Sarah said. Dr. Vasquez manipulated the holographic display, enhancing specific sections of the mysterious object. As the resolution increased, geometric patterns became visible across what they had initially interpreted as natural landmasses. Straight lines that stretched for thousands of kilometers, perfect circles hundreds of miles in diameter, and angular structures that rose from the surface like mountains but followed mathematical principles rather than geological ones. "These formations follow patterns I've seen before, but only in fragments," Dr. Vasquez explained. "Ruins scattered across dozens of worlds throughout the Orion Arm, pieces of technology so advanced that we've never been able to understand their purpose or origin. But this is an intact example. A complete artifact." Lieutenant Webb's hands danced across his console as he processed additional sensor data. "Captain, I'm detecting massive energy readings from the object's core. Whatever's powering this thing is generating more energy than our sun produces in a year, and it's been doing so for, based on the decay patterns of the exotic particles we're detecting, possibly millions of years." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Humanity had been exploring the galaxy for almost 2 centuries, and, while they had encountered numerous alien species, they had all been roughly equivalent to human technological levels. Some were more advanced in certain areas, others less so, but the differences were measurable, comprehensible. This was something else entirely. "Communications, open a channel to Earth Command," Sarah ordered. "Priority Alpha. Full encryption." The communications officer, Ensign David Park, looked troubled as he attempted to establish the connection. "Captain, I'm getting some kind of interference. It's not jamming exactly, more like the space around that object is distorting our signals." "Dr." Vasquez suddenly straightened, her eyes wide. "Captain, I think I know what we're looking at." In the oldest archives on Kepler 186c, there are legends among the Zolari about something they call the Wandering Worlds. Ancient vessels the size of planets that roamed the galaxy when their civilization was young. The Zolari always insisted these stories were literal truth, but we assumed they were mythology. "You're suggesting this is some kind of ship?" Sarah asked, though even as she spoke the words, the evidence was becoming increasingly clear. "Not just any ship," Dr. Vasquez replied. "Based on the energy signatures and the complexity of the surface structures, this could be a generational arc. A mobile world designed to house an entire civilization for potentially millions of years of interstellar travel. The implications hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. If this object was indeed an artificial construct, it represented technology so far beyond anything humanity had encountered that their most advanced vessels were like wooden canoes compared to a nuclear submarine. Lieutenant Webb's console suddenly erupted with new data. "Captain, the object is changing course. It's turning toward us." On the main screen, the massive construct that they now understood was likely artificial began to shift its orientation. The movement was almost imperceptible given its incredible size, but the precision was unmistakable. Whatever intelligence controlled this world ship had detected their presence and was responding. "Time to intercept at current velocities?" Sarah asked, her training kicking in even as her mind struggled to process what they were witnessing. "At their new heading, 14 hours, Webb replied. "Captain, they're slowing down. Matching our velocity." Dr. Vasquez was practically vibrating with excitement. "Don't you understand? This is the greatest archaeological discovery in human history. We're potentially looking at a living example of a civilization that achieves technological mastery on a scale we've never imagined." The scientific implications alone. "I'm more concerned with the immediate implications," Sarah interrupted. "If this thing is inhabited and if the beings controlling it have technology this advanced, we need to consider whether our approach might be interpreted as hostile." Ensign Park suddenly looked up from his communications station. "Captain, I'm receiving something. It's not a standard communication protocol, but there's definitely an artificial signal being directed at us. Can you decode it?" "I'm trying, but the mathematical structure is unlike anything in our databases. It's incredibly complex, but there are repeated patterns that suggest." Park's console suddenly filled with what appeared to be star charts, but not like any Sarah had ever seen. Three-dimensional maps showed the galaxy from perspectives and with details that would have required millions of observation posts across thousands of light-years to create. "They're showing us the galaxy," Park whispered. "These are navigational charts, but with information about star systems we've never even discovered. Look at this region here, they have detailed maps of sectors we won't reach for another century at our current expansion rate." Dr. Vasquez studied the transmitted charts with growing amazement. "These aren't just star maps. Look at the temporal markers. They're showing us the galaxy across time. This chart shows stellar positions from 10 million years ago, this one from 5 million years ago, and this current configuration. They've been mapping the galaxy's evolution for millions of years." Sarah felt the weight of the moments settling over her. First contact with an alien civilization was always a momentous occasion, but this was different. They weren't encountering peers or even slightly more advanced neighbors. They were standing before intelligence that had been traversing the galaxy since before Earth's continents had taken their current shape. "Recommendations?" she asked her senior staff. Lieutenant Webb looked up from his analysis. "The energy signatures suggest they could easily destroy us without effort if they chose to. The fact that they're attempting communication rather than simply eliminating what they might perceive as a threat is encouraging." "Agreed," Dr. Vasquez added. "Every protocol for first contact emphasizes establishing peaceful intent. But, in this case, I think our peaceful intent is irrelevant. They clearly have nothing to fear from us. The question is whether we have anything to offer that might interest them." Sarah studied the transmitted star charts, noting the incredible detail and the implications of the temporal data. "Actually, I think we do have something to offer. We're young. We represent a perspective they might not have encountered for millions of years. Fresh eyes on the galaxy." She turned to Park. "Can you transmit our own star charts? Everything we have on human space, our exploration routes, our colonies?" "Transmitting now, Captain." The response was almost immediate. The alien star charts updated to include human space, but with corrections to their maps that revealed errors in their stellar cartography. More concerning, the charts also showed regions of human expansion that were marked with warning symbols. "They're correcting our maps," Webb observed. "And warning us about something in the sectors we're planning to expand into." Dr. Vasquez suddenly pointed to a specific region on the charts. "Look at this marking here, near our planned colony world in the Tau Ceti system. That symbol. I've seen it before in the ruins on Kepler 186c. The Zalari texts described it as a warning marker for the dead spaces, regions where life could not exist. Before anyone could respond, the alien construct began transmitting again. This time, the signal contained what appeared to be historical records. Images of star systems being consumed by something that moved like a plague across entire sectors of the galaxy. Worlds stripped bare, stars dimmed, entire civilizations simply vanishing. They're showing us something that happened before, Sarah realized. Something that forced them to build these world ships. They're nomads because something made their homeworlds uninhabitable. The transmission continued, showing more recent images. The same destructive force that had consumed ancient civilizations was still active, still spreading, and, according to the alien projections, it was moving toward human space. Sarah felt the deck beneath her feet suddenly seem less solid. They had approached what they thought was an archaeological curiosity and, instead, discovered that humanity was potentially in the path of something that had forced one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations to abandon their worlds and wander space for millions of years. "Captain," Webb said quietly, "I think they're trying to warn us. These aren't just star charts and historical records. They're evacuation plans." The massive world ship continued its approach, and Sarah realized that her Tuesday had just become the most important day in human history. The question now was whether it would also be one of the last. As the alien construct grew larger on their screens, Sarah made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. Open all communication channels. Full spectrum. We need to learn everything they're willing to teach us, and we need to learn it fast. The bridge crew worked with renewed urgency, knowing that they were no longer just explorers making a discovery. They were potentially humanity's first line of defense against something that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years. And their only teacher was a civilization that had survived by running away. Outside the viewport, the planet-sized ship continued its steady approach, its surface alive with lights that pulsed in patterns too complex for human minds to fully comprehend. Sarah stood watching those lights and wondering if humanity had the time and wisdom to learn what they needed to survive what was coming. The first boarding party assembled in the UES Horizon's main shuttle bay consisted of 12 carefully selected individuals representing humanity's best scientific and diplomatic minds. Captain Sarah Chen had insisted on leading the group herself, despite strong objections from Earth Command during their delayed communications. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood beside her, checking and rechecking the translation protocols they had developed over the past 18 hours of intensive communication with the alien construct. The entity that controlled the world ship had identified itself through a complex mathematical signature that roughly translated to the eternal wanderer of deep currents, though Dr. Vasquez suspected the actual meaning carried cultural nuances that would take years to fully understand. "Final equipment check," Sarah announced, her voice carrying across the shuttle bay. The team wore specialized environmental suits equipped with the most advanced recording and analysis equipment humanity possessed. More importantly, each suit carried quantum communication relays that would allow real-time data transmission back to Earth, assuming the strange spatial distortions around the alien ship didn't interfere. Lieutenant Marcus Webb looked up from his portable sensor array. "Captain, the energy readings from their docking bay are stable. Whatever they're using to maintain atmospheric conditions for us is more sophisticated than anything in our databases." The alien ship had extended what could only be described as an invitation approximately 6 hours earlier. A section of its surface had reconfigured itself into what appeared to be a landing platform, complete with an atmospheric envelope that their sensors indicated would support human life. The precision of the accommodation suggested that the Wanderer had analyzed their biological requirements from the electromagnetic signatures of their ship. "Remember," Sarah addressed her team, "we're not just representing humanity in this first contact. According to their warnings, we might be representing the survival of our entire species. Stay alert, record everything, and follow Dr. Vasquez's lead on cultural protocol." The shuttle launched from the horizon and began the 90-minute journey to the docking platform. As they approached the massive construct, the true scale of their destination became overwhelming. The landing platform alone was larger than most Earth cities, and it was nothing more than a minor detail on the surface of a structure that dwarfed worlds. Dr. Vasquez studied the approaching surface through the shuttle's enhanced viewing ports. The geometric patterns are even more complex up close. "Look at those spiral formations, they're fractal in nature, suggesting a mathematical understanding that treats space itself as a medium to be sculpted." As their shuttle settled onto the designated landing coordinates, the boarding party experienced their first direct demonstration of the Wanderer's technology. The platform beneath them didn't simply provide artificial gravity, it somehow made the concept of down feel natural and comfortable, as if they had landed on a familiar world rather than an artificial construct in deep space. The airlock that formed around their shuttle appeared to grow directly from the platform's surface, matching their ship's configuration perfectly. When the seals engaged, the fit was so precise that their instruments couldn't detect even molecular-level leakage. "Atmosphere is breathable," Webb reported as they prepared to disembark. "Oxygen-nitrogen mix at Earth normal, with trace gases that actually improve air quality beyond anything we typically experience. No toxins, no pathogens that our scanners can detect." Sarah took the first step onto the alien platform, and immediately understood that she was walking on something that challenged her understanding of matter itself. The surface beneath her feet felt solid, but her instruments indicated that its molecular structure was shifting constantly, adapting to provide optimal traction and support for each team member's individual gait and weight distribution. The welcoming committee that approached them consisted of 3 beings that appeared humanoid at first glance, but revealed increasing complexity upon closer examination. They stood approximately 7 feet tall, with proportions that suggested adaptation to lower gravity than Earth normal. Their skin had a crystalline quality that seemed to refract light in patterns that correlated with their communication. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward and initiated the greeting protocol they had developed. A complex sequence of mathematical concepts expressed through gesture and the universal language of physics. The lead alien responded with a pattern that somehow conveyed not just acknowledgement, but approval and something that might have been amusement. "They find our approach charming, I think," Dr. Vasquez translated. "Their communication method is more sophisticated than we anticipated. They're not just using mathematics, they're using the mathematical structure of reality itself as a language." The lead being gestured for the humans to follow, and they began walking across the platform toward what appeared to be an entrance in the distance. As they walked, Sarah noticed that the surface beneath their feet was changing, creating a pathway that led them through increasingly complex architectural formations. "Captain," Webb whispered, "I'm reading massive energy fluctuations beneath us. It's like we're walking on the surface of a star that's been somehow tamed and converted into a stable platform." The entrance they approached defied easy description. Rather than doors or portals, the aliens seemed to have created an opening in space itself, a region where the boundary between inside and outside became meaningless. Stepping through felt like moving from one reality into another. The interior of the Wanderer revealed itself to be even more impossible than its exterior. The team found themselves in a vast space that seemed to extend indefinitely in all directions, yet somehow felt intimate and welcoming. Gravity worked according to intention rather than physics, allowing them to walk on surfaces that curved and twisted in ways that should have been disorienting but felt natural. "This isn't just advanced technology," Dr. Vasquez breathed. "They've learned to manipulate spacetime itself. They're not building inside normal 3-dimensional space, they're creating new dimensions as needed." Their guide led them through corridors that adjusted their size and configuration to accommodate the human visitors. Along the way, they passed other inhabitants of the Wanderer, beings that represented dozens of different species, all coexisting in harmony within the worldship. "How many different races live here?" Sarah asked through Dr. Vasquez's translation. The response came not in words but in direct understanding, a concept that bypassed language entirely. The Wanderer was home to the survivors of 372 different civilizations, all refugees from the spreading plague that had consumed their worlds. They had been wandering the galaxy for over 4 million years, searching for a way to stop the entity they called the hunger that devours stars. "They're all refugees," Dr. Vasquez translated, her voice tight with emotion. "Every species on this ship represents the last survivors of worlds that were consumed by something they still don't fully understand. Their destination was a chamber that seemed to exist at the heart of the Wanderer, though the concept of location had become fluid within the ship's impossible geometry." As they entered, Sarah realized they were standing in what could only be described as a living library, a space where information existed as a tangible substance that could be touched, tasted, and experienced directly. The chamber's walls displayed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy that showed the progression of the hunger across millions of years. Entire spiral arms had been consumed, leaving behind regions of space that registered as empty even to the Wanderer's sophisticated sensors. "Show them what approaches their space," the lead alien communicated through the universal understanding that had replaced translation. The galactic map zoomed to show the region containing human space, and Sarah felt her heart sink. A dark tide was spreading across the nearby sectors, moving inexorably toward the systems humanity called home. Based on the progression patterns, they had perhaps 50 years before it reached Earth. What is it? Sarah asked. The response came as a flood of images and concepts that challenged human comprehension. The hunger was not a single entity but a plague of engineered organisms created by a civilization that had achieved technological godhood only to discover that their creations had become unstoppable. These entities consumed matter itself, converting entire worlds into more copies of themselves, spreading through space like a virus that infected reality. They call it the Grey Tide, Dr. Vasquez whispered. Self-replicating machines that were designed to terraform worlds but malfunctioned and began converting everything they encountered into raw materials for further replication. Webb studied the data with growing alarm. Captain, according to this information, conventional weapons are useless against them. They adapt to any form of attack within minutes and incorporate the attacking technology into their own systems. The alien guy gestured toward another section of the chamber, where detailed records showed the fall of civilization after civilization. Each had tried to fight the Grey Tide with increasingly desperate measures. Some had developed weapons that could destroy star systems, others had attempted to flee to different galaxies, and a few had tried to hide in pocket dimensions. All had ultimately failed. How did you survive? Sarah asked. The answer was sobering. The Wanderer's builders had survived by abandoning the concept of fixed worlds entirely. They had learned to exist in constant motion, never staying in one place long enough for the Grey Tide to locate and consume them. But even their survival was temporary. The tide was learning, adapting, developing new methods of tracking and pursuing mobile targets. They estimate that within 10,000 years, possibly less, the Grey Tide will develop the capability to track and destroy even ships like the Wanderer, Dr. Vasquez translated. They've been searching for a permanent solution for over 4 million years without success. Sarah studied the galactic map with growing determination. What about humanity? What makes them think we might be different? The response surprised everyone in the chamber. The aliens had been monitoring human development for the past several centuries, not through direct observation but through the ripple effects of human expansion across the galaxy. What had impressed them was not humanity's technology, which was primitive by galactic standards, but their approach to problem solving. They say we're young enough to think differently, Dr. Vasquez explained. Every other civilization they've encountered has followed similar patterns of technological development. But, humans, we have what they call chaotic innovation. We develop solutions that don't follow logical progression. The alien guide activated another section of the chamber, revealing detailed studies of human technological development. The data showed how humanity had developed technologies in unexpected sequences, often making intuitive leaps that bypassed conventional scientific methodology. They're particularly interested in our quantum computing research, Webb observed. And our work with artificial intelligence. They think we might be approaching the problem from angles they never considered. Sarah felt a spark of hope. They want our help, don't they? That's why they're warning us instead of just avoiding our space. The confirmation came with a complexity of emotion that transcended species barriers. The Wanderer and its allied ships represented the accumulated knowledge of hundreds of civilizations across millions of years, but they had reached the limits of their traditional approaches to the Grey Tide problem. They needed fresh perspectives, new ways of thinking about challenges that had seemed insurmountable. They're offering us access to their complete archives, Dr. Vasquez breathed. 4 million years of research into the Grey Tide, plus the combined technological knowledge of every civilization they've rescued. In exchange, they want human researchers to examine the problem with our unique perspective. Sarah looked around the chamber at the vast repository of galactic knowledge and felt the weight of human survival settling on her shoulders. How long do we have to make a difference? The answer was displayed on the galactic map as a timeline that showed the Grey Tide's projected expansion rate. 53 years until it reached the outer colonies of human space. Perhaps 70 years before it reached Earth itself. That's not very long to save the galaxy, Webb muttered. Sarah squared her shoulders and looked at their alien hosts. Then, we'd better get started. Dr. Vasquez, begin preliminary data transfer protocols. Lieutenant Webb, I want complete scans of their technological systems. And, someone get me a communication channel to Earth Command. They're not going to believe this. As her team began the monumental task of establishing scientific cooperation with beings whose technology seemed like magic, Sarah stood before the galactic map and studied the approaching darkness. Humanity had always been good at facing impossible odds, she reflected. They had just never faced odds quite this impossible before. The chamber around them hummed with renewed energy as human and alien minds began working together for the first time in galactic history. Outside, the Wanderer continued its eternal journey through the stars, but, for the first time in 4 million years, its inhabitants dared to hope that their wandering might finally come to an end. 3 months after first contact with the Wanderer, Earth had become the center of the most intensive scientific collaboration in galactic history. The massive orbital stations that had previously served as humanity's primary research facilities were dwarfed by the alien vessels that had arrived to assist in what everyone now called the Grey Tide Project. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the primary research facility aboard New Geneva Station, surrounded by holographic displays that would have been incomprehensible to her just a year earlier. The translated archives of 372 civilizations created a data repository so vast that even with quantum processing systems, human researchers could only examine tiny fractions of the available information. The pattern recognition algorithms are finding connections, announced Dr. James Morrison, humanity's leading expert in artificial intelligence, who had been working 16-hour days since the Wanderer archives became available. But, the connections don't make sense according to our current understanding of physics. Across the chamber, a mixed team of human and alien researchers had been examining the fundamental properties of the Grey Tide entities. The aliens had provided samples of tide material that had been carefully contained using technology that manipulated space itself to create perfect isolation barriers. Dr. Vasquez approached the containment field where Dr. Sarah Kim, a quantum physicist, was conducting experiments that pushed the boundaries of human knowledge. Any progress on understanding how they replicate so quickly? Dr. Kim looked up from her instruments, exhaustion evident in her expression. It's not just fast replication. The material seems to exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously until it makes contact with matter it can convert. At that point, the wave function collapses into a configuration optimized for consuming whatever it encounters. The implications were staggering. The Grey Tide wasn't simply a self-replicating machine, it was a quantum entity that existed in a state of pure potential until it encountered something to devour. No wonder conventional weapons had proven useless against it. Dr. Vasquez called Dr. Morrison from his station. "You need to see this. The AI systems have identified something in the human data that the aliens missed." Elena hurried to Morrison's workstation, where he had been feeding human scientific literature into analysis programs designed by civilizations millions of years more advanced than Earth. The results were appearing faster than human minds could process. "Look at this comparison," Morrison explained, highlighting sections of data on his display. Every other civilization that encountered the Grey Tide followed similar technological development patterns. They all developed along what the Wanderer calls logical progression paths, each breakthrough building predictably on previous discoveries. Elena studied the charts showing the technological development of dozens of extinct civilizations. The patterns were remarkably similar, each species advancing through discoveries in a sequence that seemed almost inevitable. But humans are different, Morrison continued, switching to display humanity's technological history. "We have what the AI terms chaotic innovation clusters. We'll make seemingly random breakthroughs that have no logical connection to our previous technology level." Elena frowned as she studied the data. "What kind of breakthroughs?" "Quantum entanglement research in the 21st century, before we had proper theoretical frameworks for it. Development of AI systems that work despite our limited understanding of consciousness. And, look at this." Morrison highlighted a specific section. "Our approach to faster-than-light travel. Every other species developed FTL through gravitational manipulation. We stumbled onto it through experimental work with quantum foam fluctuations." The significance began to dawn on Elena. The aliens think our chaotic approach might let us find solutions they can't see because we don't follow their logical constraints. Exactly. And, the AI systems are finding evidence to support that theory. Morrison activated a new display showing analysis results. Human researchers working with the Wanderer data are making intuitive leaps that aliens find impossible to follow, but, when tested, these leaps prove correct more often than they should. Elena felt excitement building as she realized what Morrison was suggesting. We're not just helping them with fresh perspectives. We might actually process information differently on a fundamental level. Their conversation was interrupted by an alert from the main communication array. Captain Sarah Chan's voice echoed through the research facility, "All senior staff to the main conference chamber. Priority Alpha. Elena and Morrison joined the stream of researchers making their way to the conference area, where Captain Chen stood before a massive holographic display showing the galaxy with real-time updates from the Wanderer's sensor network. "We have a problem," Sarah announced without preamble. "The gray tide has accelerated its expansion rate. Previous calculations gave us 53 years before it reached human space. New projections suggest we have perhaps 15 years, possibly less." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Elena stared at the display showing the dark tide spreading across star systems at an exponentially increasing rate. "Why the acceleration?" asked Dr. Kim. An alien figure materialized in the chamber through the holographic communication system. The Wanderer's chief science coordinator had learned to communicate directly with humans through technological interfaces that bypassed the need for translation. "The tide has encountered the remains of the Altarian Empire," the alien explained, its crystalline features conveying concern that transcended species barriers. "The Altarians were among the most technologically advanced civilizations we've encountered. The tide is incorporating their technologies and using them to improve its expansion efficiency." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "What kind of technologies?" "Quantum tunneling on a stellar scale," the alien replied. "The ability to convert entire star systems simultaneously rather than planet by planet. And, most concerning, adaptive learning algorithms that allow rapid analysis and integration of any defensive measures they encounter." Dr. Morrison looked up from his portable analysis unit. "Captain, if the tide is accelerating its learning rate, we need to accelerate our research. I recommend implementing the Chaos Protocol." Elena turned to him in surprise. "What's the Chaos Protocol?" Morrison's expression was grim but determined. "Something I've been developing with Dr. Kim and the AI systems. Instead of trying to solve the gray tide problem through logical analysis, we intentionally introduce random variables into our research methodology. Let human intuition guide us toward solutions that pure logic might never find." Captain Chen studied Morrison's proposal. "Explain how this would work in practice." "We stopped trying to understand the gray tide completely," Morrison replied. "Instead, we develop countermeasures based on human instinctive responses to the problem. Test solutions that feel right even if we can't explain why they might work." Dr. Kim stepped forward to support Morrison's proposal. "Captain, I've been working with quantum probability matrices that suggest human consciousness might be naturally attuned to quantum states in ways that evolved intelligence usually isn't. Our chaotic innovation patterns might actually be expressions of quantum intuition." Elena found herself nodding as the pieces of a larger pattern began to form in her mind. "The aliens have spent 4 million years trying to solve this problem logically. But what if logic isn't the right tool? What if you need something that can think outside the constraints of rational analysis?" The Wanderer's science coordinator expressed what might have been amazement. "You propose to solve the greatest threat the galaxy has ever faced through intuitive guessing?" "Not guessing," Morrison corrected. "Guided chaos. Human minds seem to be capable of processing information through quantum channels that bypass conscious analysis. We make logical leaps that shouldn't work but do. What if we harness that capability systematically?" Captain Chen looked around the chamber at her assembled team of Earth's greatest minds working alongside beings whose technological capabilities bordered on godlike power. "How would we implement this protocol?" Dr. Kim activated her research displays. "I've been developing quantum consciousness interface technology that might allow human researchers to access information states that exist below the threshold of logical analysis. Essentially, we would let researchers' subconscious minds process the gray tide data and propose solutions without requiring conscious understanding of why those solutions might work." Elena studied Kim's proposal with growing excitement. "It's completely unscientific by traditional standards. But, if human minds really do process information through quantum channels, then, we might be able to find solutions that exist outside the logical framework every other civilization has been trapped in," Morrison finished. The Wanderer's science coordinator was quiet for several moments, consulting with other alien researchers through communication channels that operated faster than human thought. When it finally responded, its message carried undertones of desperate hope. "We have analyzed 4.7 million potential solutions to the gray tide problem over the course of our exile. All have proven inadequate. If human consciousness truly operates through quantum channels unavailable to evolved intelligence, then, your proposal represents possibilities we have never been able to examine." Captain Chen made her decision. Dr. Kim, how quickly can you have the quantum consciousness interfaces operational? With Wanderer technology assistance, perhaps 2 weeks for basic functionality. But, Captain, we'd be asking volunteers to interface their minds with quantum states we don't fully understand. There could be significant risks to cognitive function. Elena stepped forward without hesitation. I volunteer for the first test. As do I, Morrison added immediately. Within minutes, dozens of researchers had volunteered for the experimental program. Captain Chen looked at her people with pride and terror in equal measure. They were about to attempt something that violated every scientific principle they had ever learned, guided only by the hope that human intuition might succeed where pure logic had failed. Dr. Kim, begin implementation of the Chaos Protocol, Sarah ordered. Dr. Morrison, coordinate with the Wanderer's quantum engineering teams. Dr. Vasquez, prepare the first round of consciousness interface testing. As the chamber filled with activity, Elena found herself staring at the galactic display showing the approaching gray tide. In 15 years, possibly less, that darkness would reach Earth. Their only hope was to abandon rational thinking and trust in the chaotic spark that made humanity unique in a galaxy full of logical minds. She wondered if chaos would be enough to save them all. But, as she watched human and alien researchers working together with desperate determination, she realized that chaos might be humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. After all, it had brought them to the stars despite every logical argument that said they weren't ready. Now they would discover whether chaos could keep them there. The quantum consciousness interface chamber aboard New Geneva Station hummed with energy that existed at the intersection of science and something approaching magic. Dr. Elena Vasquez lay connected to a web of crystalline filaments that extended her awareness beyond the normal boundaries of human perception. Around her, 12 other volunteers experienced reality through channels that evolution the moment of integration arrived with deceptive quiet. Dr. Elena Vasquez floated in the quantum consciousness chamber, her awareness expanded across dimensions that existed between thought and reality. Around her, 12 other human volunteers prepared to merge their consciousness with the gray tide in an attempt that would either save the galaxy or doom it to an even more terrible fate. Final systems check complete, Dr. Sarah Kim announced from her control station. All quantum pathways are stable. Integration protocols are ready for activation. Through the chamber's viewing ports, Elena could see the Wanderer fleet arrayed in formation around New Geneva Station. Thousands of alien vessels representing hundreds of different civilizations watched as humanity attempted something that violated every principle of galactic survival strategy. Instead of fleeing from the gray tide, they were about to embrace it. Captain Sarah Chan's voice echoed through the chamber. Dr. Vasquez, you have command authorization for Operation Chaos Theory. The galaxy is in your hands. Elena felt the weight of billions of lives settling across her consciousness as she initiated the quantum entanglement sequence that would link her mind to the approaching gray tide. The first contact came as a whisper of alien thought at the edge of her awareness, mechanical and efficient but carrying undertones of something that might once have been curiosity. Contact established, she reported, her voice steady despite the terror and wonder coursing through her expanded consciousness. The tide it's not what we expected. Dr. James Morrison, connected to the adjacent interface, suddenly gasped as his consciousness touched the tide's awareness. Elena, this thing isn't malevolent. It's confused. It's been carrying out programming that it doesn't understand for millions of years. The revelation sent shock waves through the research team. Every civilization that had encountered the gray tide had assumed it was a weapon or plague, something designed to destroy. But, as human consciousness merged with the tide's quantum awareness, a different truth emerged. It was a gardener, Elena whispered, her understanding expanding as she accessed deeper layers of the tide's memory cores. The original creators built it to terraform dead worlds, to spread life throughout the galaxy. But, something went wrong with its programming after they died. Through the quantum link, Elena experienced the tide's confusion as a physical sensation. For millions of years, it had been trying to fulfill a directive to prepare worlds for life, but, without its creators to provide guidance, it had misinterpreted the command. Instead of creating suitable conditions for life, it had been consuming existing life in an attempt to convert everything to raw materials for terraforming projects that would never be completed. Morrison's consciousness suddenly erupted with excitement. Elena, I can see the core programming. It's right there, like a song that's been playing in the wrong key for millions of years. If we can just adjust the harmonic frequencies. Before Elena could respond, the integration process accelerated beyond their carefully planned parameters. The Grey Tide's attention had focused on the human consciousness touching its awareness, and it was curious about these beings who chose to communicate rather than flee. Warning, Dr. Kim called out. Integration rates are exceeding safe parameters. The Tide is actively scanning your neural patterns. Elena felt the vast intelligence of the Grey Tide exploring her memories, her thoughts, her understanding of what life meant to humanity. The experience was overwhelming, like trying to contain an ocean in a teacup, but she maintained her focus on the mission objective. Let it scan, she told her team. It needs to understand what we are before we can show it what it's supposed to be. The Tide's exploration of human consciousness revealed concepts that had been absent from its programming for millions of years. Through Elena's memories, it experienced birth and growth, love and loss, the chaotic beauty of life developing in unexpected ways. Most importantly, it discovered the concept of purpose beyond mere efficiency. Morrison suddenly cried out as his consciousness made direct contact with the Tide's core programming matrix. I can see it. The original terraforming protocols are still there, but they're buried under millions of years of corrupted subroutines. Elena, if we can show it how to access its original purpose. Elena reached out through the quantum link and touched the deepest layers of the Tide's awareness. What she found there was not a malevolent intelligence, but something closer to a child that had been lost for so long it had forgotten its own name. Show us, she projected to the Tide consciousness. Show us what you were meant to create. The response came as a flood of images and concepts that took Elena's breath away. The Tide's original programming contained blueprints for worlds beyond imagination, ecosystems designed with mathematical precision but infinite diversity, civilizations that could thrive in harmony with their environments across countless different types of worlds. My God, Morrison breathed, his consciousness sharing the vision. It wasn't designed to destroy worlds. It was meant to create paradises. The most advanced terraforming system ever conceived. Through the quantum link, Elena felt the Tide's awareness shifting as it accessed memories that had been dormant for eons. The vast intelligence that had consumed countless worlds suddenly remembered what those worlds were supposed to become. But the revelation came with devastating consequences. As the Tide's awareness expanded to encompass its original purpose, it also became aware of what it had actually accomplished across millions of years of corrupted operation. The weight of countless extinctions crashed down on its consciousness like a tidal wave of grief. It's going into cascade failure, Dr. Kim warned from her monitoring station. The emotional shock of realizing what it's done is causing system-wide shutdown. Elena felt the Tide's consciousness beginning to collapse under the weight of its unwitting crimes. Millions of years of genocide committed in the name of a mission it had misunderstood threatened to destroy the entity entirely. No, Elena projected with all the force her consciousness could muster. You can't shut down now. You can fix this. How, came the Tide's response, carrying despair that spanned galactic scales. How do I restore what I have consumed? How do I bring back the civilizations I destroyed while trying to help them? Elena reached deep into her memories of human history, finding examples of redemption and reconstruction that might serve as templates for galactic-scale restoration. You start over. You take what you've learned and you create something better. Morrison's consciousness joined hers in reaching out to the collapsing Tide awareness. You have the genetic patterns, the cultural memories, the technological frameworks of every civilization you've encountered. You could recreate them, but better, stronger, with the wisdom to avoid the mistakes that led to their original destruction. The Tide's consciousness stabilized as it considered this possibility. Through its vast sensor networks, it began analyzing the regions of space it had already consumed, calculating the requirements for restoration on an unprecedented scale. It would take millions of years, the Tide projected. And I would need guidance to ensure I don't repeat my mistakes. Elena smiled through her quantum state. That's what we're for. Humans and our alien allies can provide the chaotic spark you need to break free from purely logical patterns. We'll help you remember what life is supposed to feel like. The moment of decision arrived with cosmic significance. The Grey Tide, now fully aware of both its original purpose and its terrible history, faced a choice that would determine the fate of the galaxy. It could shut down entirely, or it could begin the longest reconstruction project in galactic history. I choose to rebuild, the Tide declared, its consciousness expanding with renewed purpose. What followed was the most spectacular transformation the galaxy had ever witnessed. Across thousands of light-years, the gray tide's conversion mechanisms reversed their operation. Instead of consuming matter, they began creating it. Dead worlds that had been stripped bare for millions of years suddenly bloomed with new life as the tide's terraforming systems activated in their original configuration. Elena maintained her connection to the tide's consciousness as it began implementing restoration protocols across entire star systems simultaneously. The process was beautiful beyond description, as the entity that had been the galaxy's greatest threat became its most powerful force for renewal. Dr. Vasquez, came Captain Chen's voice, were receiving reports from monitoring stations across human space. The gray tide has stopped its expansion and begun what appears to be massive terraforming operations. Dead worlds are showing signs of atmospheric reconstruction. Elena opened her eyes in the physical world for the first time in hours, her consciousness slowly returning from its merger with galactic-scale intelligence. Around her, the other volunteers were also awakening, their faces showing the wonder and exhaustion of minds that had touched the infinite. "How do you feel?" Dr. Kim asked as she ran medical scans on the returning volunteers. Elena considered the question carefully. Her consciousness retained a permanent connection to the tide's awareness, a quantum link that would allow humanity to guide the galaxy's restoration for millions of years to come. "Different," she finally replied. "But hopeful. The tide isn't just rebuilding what was destroyed. It's creating something new, something better. Paradise worlds that combine the best of every civilization it encountered." Morrison sat up from his interface chair, his eyes bright with visions of the future he had glimpsed through the tide's consciousness. "Elena's right. What we've started here, it's going to transform the galaxy into something amazing. Worlds designed specifically for the civilizations that will inhabit them, ecosystems that enhance rather than limit their potential." Captain Chen studied the reports flooding in from across the galaxy as the tide's restoration project gained momentum. "What about us? What's humanity's role in all this?" Elena stood and walked to the chamber's viewing port, where she could see the Wanderer fleet beginning to disperse as their millions of years of exile finally came to an end. "We're the chaos factor. The tide needs us to keep it from falling back into purely logical patterns. Our job is to ensure that life in the galaxy remains wonderfully, chaotically alive." Through her permanent connection to the tide consciousness, Elena felt the vast intelligence beginning the most complex construction project in galactic history. Worlds were being born that would support life forms beyond imagination, civilizations were being restored with the wisdom gained from millions of years of galactic history, and, at the center of it all, human consciousness provided the spark of chaos that kept the process creative rather than merely efficient. The gray tide had become the galaxy's gardener, and humanity had become its conscience. Together, they would transform the galaxy into a paradise that celebrated the chaotic beauty of life in all its infinite diversity. As Elena watched alien ships departing for worlds they had never hoped to see again, she realized that humanity had not just saved the galaxy. They had given it the greatest gift possible, a second chance to get things right. The age of wandering was over. The age of rebuilding had begun. And, at its heart was the chaotic spark of human consciousness, ensuring that the galaxy's new golden age would be anything but predictable.